And hello, everyone. Welcome to 15 Minutes. I'm Andrew Huff. Thanks for joining us. My guest today is a member of the King County Superior Court bench nominated by Governor Inslee in 2017. My guest, the Honorable Michael Diaz. Judge, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
We appreciate you coming down and visiting us here. We know you're a busy guy. You know, you have a very interesting life story. Your family and you as a young boy immigrated from Peru to Washington State when you were a young family. I would imagine your parents talked about that experience over the years. What was it like for them to move from another country to the United States, and especially for you as a young boy? What was that experience like for them?
Yeah, it was a challenge. I was born in Lima. My older brother and I and my parents moved to the Seattle area, when I was just an infant, so I don't remember a lot of the initial struggles. But, they came with relatively very little English. Neither of them had finished college at that point, so somewhat limited job opportunities. My dad found a job when he was in New York originally, washing dishes. And then when he moved out to Seattle, he cleaned some of the buildings, that I would later work in as a lawyer. My mom and a bunch of her sisters, my dad's one of 7, my mom's one of 12, and they helped bring up most of their family to the Seattle area. And a bunch of my mom's sisters worked in Belltown, which was then pretty industrial, and they worked sewing bags and doing that kind of thing for an old company named Taggart that made backpacks and things.
Okay.
And so they had all of the challenges, economic, cultural, linguistic, that a lot of our immigrant communities have.
I would imagine they spoke to you about their decision to leave Peru. What were some of the reasons they decided to uproot and
Yep,
move out of the country?
A couple of reasons. One of my mom's sisters had moved from another part of the United States to Seattle, and then they'd heard that Seattle was a nice, quiet little town. They lived in Queens and they lived in New York for a bit, and they said this is a good place to raise a family. And two, just primarily for the opportunity. They knew that they were going to have more, they and their kids, especially their kids, would have more opportunities in the United States than they could in Peru. I mean, Peru, over a period of 30 years, and I won't dive into the political history of Peru, but had just extremely unstable governments. The most recent, while they were going to college in Peru, was a left-wing military dictatorship that would literally go into the university they were in and pluck professors out of their classrooms, and then you wouldn't see them again. And this is common, was common at the time in a lot of Latin America, Argentina, Chile, these dirty wars kind of thing. That obviously affected the economic development and the opportunities that they had. So they really wanted to go somewhere where their children could have a better shot.
Can raise their family in safety and
classic American dream stuff.
Work for prosperity, and that sounds like pretty much what they did, certainly what you did. You ended up at some point in Ballard. At that time, the working class neighborhood of Ballard. I certainly remember it back then as well. Ballard's changed a little bit.
It sure has.
What was life for you like when you're moving into a new country, you start school, Spanish is primarily spoken at your home. What was life for you like as a young kid when you're trying to blend in a new school?
I mean, I will say Ballard was great. I mean, it really was. It was working class. There were a lot of machinists. My dad was a machinist. He went to North Seattle, got a degree to become a machinist, and he was a machinist there for a small company that fed parts into Boeing, and eventually went to work for Boeing, but was there, and my mom was a special ed teacher. As you can tell, I'm just super proud of my parents. I mean, what they did is so much harder than what I did, is the general lesson I'm trying to convey here. But for me, growing up, Ballard was great. It was quiet. You could ride your bike around, and we rode our bike just everywhere. Me and my friends. I went to the local Catholic school, St. Alphonsus there. It was generally a working class to middle class community, from Ballard all the way up to Loyal Heights and a little bit north of that where they pull kids from. I was the only Latino in my grade, probably from kindergarten through 6th grade, when we then moved down the South End, which is a little bit more racially and ethnically diverse. But I loved Ballard. I mean, there were, you'd have a lot of Scandinavian influence was still there, in the 80s. And, you'd have a lot of UFTA stickers and things like that. And there was a lot of pride in that.
Still see those around.
Still see those occasionally, but a lot nicer restaurants now.
Yeah. So I have family that grew up in Ballard, so I spent a lot of time there. And of course, remember when Zesto's was still there?
Oh, totally.
Family talked about that.
Yeah. Spent a lot of quarters at Zesto's.
Yes.
Yeah.
You too, huh?
Yeah.
You were the first attorney in your, as you mentioned, your rather large Latino family. For many people who decide to go to law school, sometimes it's a person who had some influence in their lives. Other times it's a career decision. What was your decision to enter law school?
It's a great question. My mom and dad both had visions of their kids to be professionals, right?
Okay.
In some way. They didn't know what. They didn't know exactly what that meant in the United States, in the American context, but they know they wanted they valued education a lot and wanted us to pursue that as far as we could. And the stability and those sorts of things that come with advanced degrees. So early on, my mom said, your brother's going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer, and your sister is going to be a principal. And that's actually how it turned out.
A principal?
Yeah. And my sister's a principal at Wing Luke Elementary here in Seattle Elementary Schools. And then we adopted 3 of my cousins from Peru and also encouraged them after a period of transition to keep pursuing as much as education as they were able. But that was always in the back of my mind. I liked reading, I liked writing. I first, in college, fell in love with philosophy, and so I went to go do that for a couple of years in graduate school. And there were just a variety of factors there, but one of them was I wanted to get back to Seattle. And a law degree provides you a lot of flexibility. You can do a lot of different things with a law degree, A. And then B, I really did want to I wanted to serve in some way. I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but I wanted to serve in some way. And so after paying off some student loans, having a law degree is a good way of doing it.
What motivated you to really want to get involved in public service and give back to your community?
Yeah. No, I think it's just values that you grow up with. I mean, you don't choose your parents, you don't choose your religion, you don't choose in a lot of ways, you don't choose your friends. And I was lucky enough to be in a situation where my parents really valued public service, and they would impart these things and caring for the least among us and those kind of things. And in high school, I went to Kennedy High School down in the South End, and it was similar. We did a lot of community service, not just because it was a check the box kind of thing, but we actually went out and flipped pancakes. I mean, part of it was hanging out, and being with friends, and but part of it was just, this is part of who we are.
Right.
And then Notre Dame is the same way. There's and other schools that you go, and the highest calling is to be able to give back, to have other kids enjoy the kind of, upbringing I had in Ballard, which for me was nearly idyllic.
You ended up going to Cornell Law School. I've heard of it, well-known law school, and I know that they're very well known for their international law program. Was that something that you were interested in working in some manner in the international forum while in law school? A little bit. I mean, again, I guess in this vague kind of inchoate way that you don't really know what you wanted. For someone like me who didn't know, I don't think I met a lawyer until I got to law school. And I don't think, the professors were the first lawyers I ever met. And so I don't know what opportunities there were out there. So I guess in some sense, yeah. And that might have motivated a little bit of the work I did coming out of private practice, which is antitrust work. And my wife is Texan, so we moved down after law school to Houston, and I did antitrust stuff down there. And there was, cases involving international oil companies and Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and things like that, which were interesting to me. You mentioned that you did have a career prosecuting or working in or litigating some complex cases, some white-collar criminal offenses. I would imagine that those kind of cases require a great deal of courtroom time. Do you enjoy being in the courtroom? I
do enjoy being in the courtroom. Right now, as a judge especially. It's all
well, of course.
Yeah, exactly. But I always have. Honestly, I didn't have a ton of courtroom experience because I was always either on the civil side or I was doing white-collar criminal defense, which actually you engage a lot with the criminal prosecutor. So we had cases against the Eastern District of Philadelphia, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Philadelphia. We had cases against the Southern District of New York. We had cases against the antitrust divisions in other places. You engage a lot with the prosecutors, but you don't necessarily go to court. You do a lot of work so that your clients in those cases, in the white-collar cases, can be in the best position to, if necessary, resolve the matter as quickly as possible or to advocate for their interests if they disagree. And so a lot of it was out of courtroom experience.
A lot of negotiating.
A lot of negotiating.
I would imagine, though, that there was maybe one particular verdict over the years that you were particularly proud of. Can you share one of those verdicts with us?
Yeah. I would say maybe a particular settlement or judgment.
Sure.
I was the lead line attorney on the Seattle Police Department consent decree.
The consent decree.
Yeah, for several years.
And tell us briefly about that, if you could.
Sure.
Involving the Seattle Police Department and the federal government.
Yeah. So in 2009, 2010, there were a series of what are called high-profile events. And there was a request from a very broad range of community groups, 34 community groups, that asked for us. I was at the U.S. Attorney's Office then, doing civil rights work, asking us to open up a pattern or practice investigation. So that means we're not criminally investigating a particular officer. We're looking at the department as a whole. So we launched that investigation and reached a finding that there was an issue with respect to the use of force that we wanted to proactively work on together with the department and with all the community stakeholders, and then ultimately reached a consent decree that's been in place for about 6.5 years. A proud moment was the same month I was leaving to join the King County Superior Court bench. Judge Robart found the department had been in full and effective compliance, that it had done everything that was being asked for it, and I was very proud of it as a team because we'd all come together, and I don't mean just the Department of Justice, I mean the city and the community stakeholders, to prove and show that there is a way to do constitutional policing, effective policing in a way that builds community trust. And the numbers and all the stories had led us to that point.
And many people say that was a perfect example of arriving at that conclusion, that consent decree, how it was handled, all the parties involved, how they worked together.
Yeah, and I was one small piece of it, but it was something, we knew we made a difference in the hundreds of people who didn't have force applied, on the folks who were in crisis who got diverted to the right resources, on officers themselves who had clear rules and had training to support them and other things. So, it wasn't so much pride in what I was doing, it was pride in what I could see that this process had generated. It's not over. The case is still going on. There's an important hearing today, actually. But there's a path forward, I think.
And there's significant changes in the department.
There are, and the data and the experience shows that. And I think the officers, as well as the community folks, would say that. And there are a lot of issues still on how to resolve it, on what is the path forward once federal oversight ends, and those sorts of things that are beyond my purview, and I can't and shouldn't, and I'm not able to comment because I don't know anything anymore. But I understand there's been progress. The ball's been moved 5 feet forward at least. So, yeah.
In 2017, Governor Inslee appointed you to the King County Superior Court bench, where you now sit. Well, I always get asked this. What do you enjoy most? About putting on that robe, going out there every day and sitting on that bench and presiding over your courtroom?
Yeah, I love the mission. Last year I was down in Kent doing a mix of criminal civil trials. I had 22 trials in 12 months. My mission was to make sure all sides got a fair trial, and I love that.
Did you say 22 trials in 12 months?
22 trials in 12 months, 18 to verdict.
Right.
And my job is to make sure that people get a chance to put on their case, consistent with the rules of evidence, and a jury, for the most part, decides those cases. And I love that mission. Now I'm in the juvenile division, and I love being able to help these kids rehabilitate and also be held accountable at the same time for some of the very serious crimes that remain in our system.
And I know that you're very active in your community. I know that you volunteered a number of hours at, I think, El Centro de la Raza.
When I was a lawyer.
When you were an attorney. Do you think that attorneys should be out there more, being more visible in the community? maybe showing the community what it is that you do on the bench. Is that something that you see judges maybe taking more of a role of?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that lawyers or judges who have an inclination towards that should definitely try to make time, in whatever form that is. It doesn't have to be, taking on a pro bono case or being, a volunteer at the neighborhood legal clinics, for King County. There are lots of ways to help. If you have that urge, if you have the desire, trying to make time is a very satisfying way of doing it. For folks who are just too busy, or they're not at the point in their career that they can do that right now, or they have family obligations, I totally get that. But at some point, stuff that lawyers and judges know that are unique to the legal system are worthy of sharing. And people, no matter what role you play, people appreciate that. And it helps our legal system.
Well stated. Just a short amount of time left. On a personal note, I have it on information that you are quite a ping pong player. Are you able to get that spin on the ball so it just nicks your opponent's table and flies away? Did you ever get that down when you were playing competitively?
I'm not that good, yeah.
I heard you were pretty good, actually.
I wish I could. I wish I could nail the white stripe on the outer corners every time. No, but we have a ping pong table in the basement. My high school friends will come over and we'll pull out the ping pong paddles and whack around.
There you go.
Yeah.
I also heard that you are prohibited from your family from singing at home because you are tone deaf. Is that right?
I am tone deaf.
Okay, so I'm not the only one who's prohibited from singing at all.
Unless it's karaoke night, which we do sometimes too. Then I have permission. But if I'm blaring off key as usual, then they'll get tamped down real quick.
Hey, Judge Diaz, it's been a pleasure having you here.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us. We hope you'll join us again for another edition of 15 Minutes. We'll see you soon.